The colony world of Valtros Prime was a shining example of humanity's adaptability, a hub of trade and diplomacy nestled at the edge of the Galactic Empire's territories. For years, humanity had worked tirelessly to prove its worth to the wider galaxy, fostering uneasy alliances and earning its place among the stars. On this particular day, the bustling markets were alive with a mix of species, their vibrant languages and colors painting a chaotic but beautiful tapestry of life. In the midst of this was Alyssa, a 7-year-old human girl with boundless curiosity and a mischievous spark in her eyes. Her parents were diplomats attending an important meeting with imperial officials. Alyssa, bored of the formalities, wandered off, her small figure weaving effortlessly through the crowd. She marveled at the strange sights, a merchant selling glowing crystals, a towering alien covered in shimmering scales, and drones buzzing overhead like mechanical bees. Everything was new, exciting, and just a little bit overwhelming. She held her stuffed toy tightly, a comfort from home, in a world that felt both wondrous and alien. Unbeknownst to her, she had crossed an invisible boundary, a restricted zone guarded by the Empire's enforcers. The armored figures, towering and cold, were unlike anything she had ever seen. Their metallic suits gleamed under the artificial sunlight, their glowing visors hiding their faces. Alyssa didn't understand their warnings, spoken in a harsh, guttural language. She only knew she was lost and scared. One of the guards stepped forward, its voice amplified and sharp. Unauthorized entry. Penalty. Execution. Alyssa froze, clutching her toy tighter. A crowd began to gather, whispers rippling through the market. Some humans in the crowd tried to intervene, their pleas drowned out by the Empire's rigid enforcement of its laws. The guard raised its weapon, a sleek, humming device that pulsed with lethal energy. Alyssa's parents arrived, breathless and panicked, pushing through the growing throng. Her mother screamed, "She's just a child." Her father held up his diplomatic badge, shouting, "This is a misunderstanding. Please, stop." The enforcers were unmoved. "The law is absolute," the lead guard declared, its voice devoid of emotion. In a single, horrifying moment, the weapon fired. The energy bolt struck Alyssa, and she crumpled to the ground, lifeless. Her stuffed toy fell beside her, its cheerful face now a tragic reminder of innocence lost. The marketplace fell silent. Humanity's representatives stood frozen, their faces a mix of disbelief and horror. Alyssa's parents collapsed beside her, their cries echoing across the plaza. The other humans looked on, powerless and enraged, as the enforcers turned and marched away, their boots clanking on the polished ground. News of the incident spread like wildfire. Within hours, the footage was broadcast across human colonies and Earth itself. The image of Alyssa, her small body lying on the cold ground, became a symbol of the Empire's cruelty. The public outcry was immediate and deafening. Protests erupted on every human world. People demanded justice, calling for the leaders to act. No more silence. They chanted, "No more submission." In the halls of power on Earth, leaders gathered in a tense, closed-door meeting. They debated their next move, weighing the risks of defying the Empire. Humanity was still young, its military untested against the vast might of the Empire's fleets. The Galactic Empire had ruled for millennia, crushing any resistance with ruthless efficiency. A direct confrontation seemed like suicide. But the voices of the people could not be ignored. Alyssa's death had ignited a fire, one that burned with grief, anger, and a desperate need for retribution. Earth's leaders knew they had no choice. Silence would mean condoning the Empire's actions, accepting humanity's role as a second-class species, and so the decision was made. In a hidden military base deep beneath the surface of Earth, preparations began. Humanity had been quietly developing its defenses, knowing that peace in the galaxy was fragile at best. Experimental weapons, stealth technology, and AI-driven ships were activated for the first time. The Unified Earth Defense Fleet, a force that had existed only in theory until now, was mobilized. In the dimly lit command center, Admiral Marcus Kane stood before his officers. His voice was steady, filled with resolve. The Empire believes we are weak. They think they can murder our children and walk away without consequence. They are wrong. We will show them what it means to face humanity. This is not just for Alyssa. This is for every life they've taken, every world they've subjugated. Today, we strike back. The officers saluted, their faces set with determination. Ships began to rise from underground hangars, their sleek forms gleaming under the floodlights. The fleet's flagship, Eternal Resolve, led the charge as humanity prepared to launch its first offensive against the most powerful empire the galaxy had ever known. Far away, in the opulent throne room of the Galactic Emperor, the news of humanity's unrest was met with disdain. The Emperor, a figure shrouded in gold and arrogance, dismissed the reports with a wave of his hand. "Let the primitives rage," he said, his voice cold and dismissive. "They will learn their place soon enough." But the Emperor had underestimated humanity. This was no longer a fight for survival. It was a fight for justice, for dignity, and for the memory of a little girl whose death had sparked a revolution. The air inside the unified Earth Defense Fleet's underground command center was electric with purpose. It had been decades since humanity first stepped onto the galactic stage, and in all those years, they had carefully hidden their true capabilities. On the surface, Earth played the part of a young and unthreatening species, eager to learn and cooperate. But beneath the facade, humanity had been preparing for the worst, knowing that the galaxy was far from a utopia. Admiral Marcus Kane stood before a massive holographic display of the galaxy, his sharp eyes scanning the illuminated points that marked the Empire's outer colonies. His voice cut through the room, steady and commanding. "The Empire believes we are powerless. It is time to show them they are wrong. Our first target is Outpost Kita 7, a vital supply hub on the Empire's frontier. If we strike hard and fast, we can cripple their logistics and send a message they cannot ignore." The officers around him nodded in unison. These were people who had trained their entire lives for a moment like this. Engineers, strategists, and soldiers, all united by a singular purpose: justice for Alyssa and the countless lives the Empire had crushed. Ships that had been hidden for years emerged from subterranean hangars, sleek and dark, their hulls designed to absorb light and radar signals. Humanity's stealth technology was unparalleled, a secret weapon developed in the shadows, while the galaxy dismissed them as insignificant. The fleet's flagship, Eternal Resolve, led the formation as the ships ascended into orbit. Inside, Commander Lyra Patel, one of the youngest and most promising officers in the fleet, stood at the helm. She had known Alyssa's family, had seen the child's bright smile during a diplomatic event on Earth. That smile haunted her now, fueling her determination. "All systems are green," Lyra reported to Admiral Kane through the comms. "We are ready to proceed." "Good," Kane replied. "Remember, this is more than a military operation. This is a message. Make it loud." The fleet's jump engines roared to life, and in an instant, the ships disappeared into the void, leaving Earth behind. The journey to Kita 7 took mere hours, but for the crew aboard the Eternal Resolve, it felt like an eternity. Tension hung heavy in the air, each person lost in their thoughts. Many of them had never seen real combat before, but they were determined to prove themselves. They weren't just fighting for Earth, they were fighting for humanity's place in the galaxy. When the fleet arrived at Kita 7, the outpost hung in the vast emptiness of space like a spider at the center of its web. It was a hub of activity, with Imperial cargo ships coming and going, ferrying supplies to the Empire's border worlds. The outpost's defenses were formidable. Layers of orbital turrets, patrolling fighters, and a shield array that glowed faintly against the darkness of space. To most, it would seem impenetrable. But humanity had an advantage the Empire couldn't predict: their creativity. Admiral Kane's plan was simple but daring. The fleet would divide into two groups. The first would draw the attention of the outpost's defenses, engaging them in a calculated game of cat and mouse. Meanwhile, the second group, led by Commander Lyra, would use the fleet's cloaking technology to slip past the defenses and strike directly at the outpost's core. The operation began with a coordinated barrage from the first group. Energy blasts lit up the void, the flashes reflecting off the hulls of the Imperial turrets as they fired back. The Empire's forces were swift to respond, deploying fighters to intercept the attackers. But the human ships were faster, their nimble designs allowing them to outmaneuver the bulkier Imperial craft. While the battle raged, Lyra's team executed their approach. The cloaking devices on their ships rendered them nearly invisible, masking their heat signatures and electromagnetic emissions. They moved silently, like shadows in the dark, slipping past the chaos unnoticed. As they neared the outpost, Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. This was the moment they had trained for, the moment that would define the future of humanity. The outpost's interior was a labyrinth of metal corridors and automated systems. Lyra led a strike team aboard, their boots making barely a sound against the cold floor. Their objective was the reactor core, a massive glowing structure at the heart of the outpost. If they could disable it, the outpost would be rendered useless, its operations grinding to a halt. The team moved with precision, their advanced gear allowing them to bypass security measures with ease. But as they neared the core, the Empire's forces caught wind of their presence. Alarms blared, red lights flashing as Imperial soldiers poured into the corridors. The clash was immediate and brutal. Energy bolts ricocheted off walls, and the humans fought with a ferocity that took the Imperials by surprise. Lyra's instincts kicked in as she fired her weapon, her team working seamlessly to cover each other. Despite being outnumbered, they held their ground, their superior tactics and training giving them the edge. One by one, the Imperial soldiers fell, but not without cost. Lyra saw one of her team members, a young soldier named Harris, take a hit to the chest. He collapsed, his face pale, but he managed a weak smile. "Keep going," he whispered. "Don't let them win." The words fueled Lyra's resolve. She pushed forward, leading the team into the reactor chamber. The core hummed with power, its glow illuminating the room in an eerie light. They had only minutes to set the charges before reinforcements arrived. The team worked quickly, their movements synchronized like clockwork. As the final charge was placed, Lyra activated the timer and signaled for extraction. The escape was a blur of gunfire and explosions. The charges detonated just as the team reached their ship, the shockwave ripping through the outpost. From the safety of space, Lyra watched as the outpost's lights flickered and died, the once imposing structure now a lifeless husk. The mission was a success. Admiral Kane's voice came over the comms, his tone filled with pride. "Well done, Commander. You've made history today." But Lyra's thoughts were elsewhere. As she looked out at the debris floating in the void, she thought of Alyssa, of Harris, and of the countless others who had suffered under the Empire's rule. This was only the beginning. Humanity's fight was far from over, but for the first time, they had struck back. They had shown the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. Back on Earth, the news of the victory spread rapidly. Footage of the destroyed outpost played on every screen, and for the first time since Alyssa's death, there was a glimmer of hope. People cheered in the streets, their voices united in a single powerful message. "We will not bow. We will not break." Far away, in the heart of the Galactic Empire, the Emperor watched the reports with a mixture of anger and disbelief. He had dismissed humanity as insignificant, a minor annoyance at best. But now, for the first time in centuries, he felt a twinge of unease. The humans were not like the others. They were unpredictable, resourceful, and above all, relentless. Let them celebrate their small victory, the Emperor said, his voice cold and sharp. "We will crush them soon enough." But even as he spoke, doubt lingered in his mind. Humanity had taken its first step into the fire, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Empire was no stranger to rebellion. Across its millennia-long rule, countless species had dared to rise against it, only to be crushed under the weight of its overwhelming might. But this time, something was different. Humanity's audacious attack on Outpost Kita 7 wasn't just a blow to the Empire's resources. It was an insult, a challenge to its absolute authority. The Emperor himself, seated on his golden throne, watched the reports with a cold, calculating gaze. His advisors shifted uneasily in the Grand Chamber, aware of the storm brewing within their leader. "These humans," the Emperor said, his voice like ice. "They have overstepped. They believe themselves capable of defying us. Let us remind them why the galaxy fears the Empire." Within hours, orders were dispatched to the Imperial fleets stationed near the human territories. Massive warships, each one a floating fortress bristling with weaponry, began their march toward Earth and its colonies. The Empire's retaliation would be swift, decisive, and brutal. This was no longer about reclaiming a lost outpost. It was about making an example of humanity, ensuring that no other species would dare follow in their footsteps. On Earth, the mood shifted from celebration to grim determination as the news of the Empire's response reached the unified Earth Defense Fleet. Admiral Kane stood before his officers in the war room, the holographic display now dominated by the approaching Imperial Armada. Each red marker represented a ship, and there were dozens of them, far more than humanity had anticipated. "This is what we feared," Kane said, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "The Empire won't stop at Kita 7. They aim to destroy us, to wipe us out as a warning to the rest of the galaxy. We cannot allow that to happen." The officers exchanged glances, their faces a mix of fear and resolve. They knew the odds were against them. The Empire's fleet outnumbered and outgunned their own, its ships equipped with advanced technology that humanity could only dream of matching. But they also knew they couldn't back down. The people of Earth and the colonies were counting on them. Preparations began immediately. Across Earth and its allied worlds, factories worked around the clock to produce weapons, ships, and supplies. Civilians volunteered in droves, eager to support the war effort. Humanity had never been more united, its diverse nations and cultures setting aside their differences to face a common enemy. The first clash occurred at the colony of Vega Prime, a lush world known for its sprawling forests and vast oceans. The Imperial fleet arrived in overwhelming force, its warships descending like predators. The colony's defenses, though valiant, were no match for the Empire's might. Orbital bombardments reduced entire cities to rubble. The once vibrant landscapes turned to ash. The Empire's soldiers, clad in their gleaming armor, marched through the ruins, their every step a reminder of the galaxy's brutal hierarchy. But even in the face of such devastation, humanity refused to break. On the outskirts of Vega Prime's capital, a group of resistance fighters launched a surprise attack on the Imperial forces. Armed with guerrilla tactics and improvised weapons, they struck hard and fast, taking out key targets before disappearing into the wilderness. Their efforts, though small in scale, slowed the Empire's advance and inspired hope among the survivors. The news of Vega Prime's fall reached Earth like a gut punch. In the command center of the Eternal Resolve, Commander Lyra Patil clenched her fists as the reports played out on the screens. "We can't let this happen again," she said, her voice filled with determination. "We have to hit them where it hurts." Admiral Kane agreed. The fleet needed to regroup, to find a way to outmaneuver the Empire's overwhelming power. Using their knowledge of the galaxy's less-traveled routes, the fleet relocated to a hidden base in the asteroid field of the Drakon system. There, they began to develop a new strategy, a combination of stealth, misdirection, and precision strikes that could level the playing field. While the fleet prepared, the Empire continued its advance, targeting human colonies one by one. Each battle was a reminder of the Empire's might, but it also revealed a weakness: their overconfidence. The Empire believed humanity was nothing more than a nuisance, a primitive species incapable of posing a real threat. They underestimated humanity's resilience, its ability to adapt and endure. The turning point came during the Battle of Epsilon Theta, a mining colony located on the edge of human space. The Empire sent a fleet of 5 warships to secure the colony's resources, expecting little resistance. But the unified Earth defense fleet was ready. Using cloaking devices and decoy drones, they lured the Imperial ships into a trap, surrounding them in the narrow confines of a planetary ring. The battle was fierce, the void lit by the flashes of energy weapons and the explosions of shattered ships. Commander Lyra led the charge, her ship weaving through the debris with precision. "Focus fire on their command ship," she ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. The fleet's combined firepower overwhelmed the Imperial vessel, its hull cracking apart in a spectacular explosion. The remaining Imperial ships, caught off guard and unable to retreat, were destroyed one by one. It was humanity's first major victory against the Empire, a moment that reignited hope across the colonies. The footage of the battle, captured by the fleet's cameras, was broadcast across human worlds and beyond. For the first time, the galaxy saw that the Empire could bleed, that it was not invincible. Back on Earth, the celebrations were tempered by the knowledge that the war was far from over. Admiral Kane addressed the people in a live broadcast, his face stern but resolute. "This victory is not the end," he said. "It is only the beginning. We have shown the galaxy that we are not afraid, that we will fight for our survival, for our freedom. But the road ahead will be long and difficult. We must stand together, united, if we are to prevail." In the Imperial capital, the news of the defeat at Epsilon Theta was met with outrage. The Emperor's advisors scrambled to provide explanations, their voices trembling as they spoke of unexpected resistance and tactical errors. The Emperor listened in silence, his expression unreadable. When they finished, he rose from his throne, his golden robes flowing like liquid light. "Enough," he said, his voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. "These humans have grown bold. It is time to remind them of their place." He turned to his war council, his gaze cold and unyielding. "Deploy the Harbinger fleet. Burn their worlds. Show them the price of defiance." The Harbinger fleet was the Empire's most fearsome weapon, a force so vast and powerful that its arrival alone was enough to break the will of entire civilizations. As the fleet began its march toward human space, the galaxy held its breath. The stage was set for a confrontation that would decide the fate of humanity, and perhaps the future of the Empire itself. In the depths of space, humanity's battered fleet drifted in the shadows of the Dracon system's asteroid belt. The victories at Keta 7 and Epsilon Theta had proven that humanity could fight, but they had also painted a massive target on Earth and its colonies. The Empire's response was relentless, sending its Harbinger fleet to crush the rebellion. The odds seemed insurmountable, yet humanity had one undeniable advantage. They were underestimated. Admiral Kane stood at the center of the war room aboard the Eternal Resolve, his face illuminated by the faint blue glow of the tactical display. Around him, officers and specialists worked tirelessly, reviewing battle plans and running simulations. "The Empire sees us as ants beneath their boots," Kane began, his voice calm but firm. "But ants can bite. They can swarm, and together they can bring down even the mightiest predator." The room was silent, the weight of his words sinking in. The people gathered here were not just soldiers. They were survivors, engineers, scientists, and tacticians who had dedicated themselves to one purpose: survival. Each person in the room knew the stakes. If they failed, humanity would be erased from the galaxy. The plan Kane proposed was bold, bordering on reckless. The Harbinger fleet, while powerful, was also overconfident and rigid in its tactics. Its strength lay in brute force, in overwhelming any opposition with sheer numbers and firepower. But that strength could also be its weakness. Kane's strategy involved splitting their forces, using guerrilla tactics to stretch the Empire's fleet thin and draw it into the asteroid belt's chaotic terrain. It was a gamble, but one they had to take. Commander Lyra Patel was among those who volunteered to lead the diversionary force. Her ship, the Shadowrunner, was a sleek, fast frigate designed for hit-and-run tactics. As the fleet prepared for the coming battle, Lyra walked through the dimly lit corridors of her ship, checking in with her crew. She saw determination in their eyes, a quiet resolve that mirrored her own. These were people who had lost everything to the Empire: families, homes, entire worlds. They fought not just for victory, but for vengeance. As the Harbinger fleet advanced into human territory, it became clear that the Empire was not holding back. Massive dreadnoughts loomed like leviathans, their energy cannons capable of obliterating entire cities. Escort ships and fighter squadrons moved in perfect formation, a testament to the Empire's military discipline. They were a force designed to inspire terror, and for many in the galaxy, they succeeded. But humanity did not fight with terror. They fought with ingenuity. The first engagement began on the outskirts of the Drakon system. Lyra's force, consisting of a dozen small ships, launched a series of hit-and-run attacks against the Imperial vanguard. Using cloaking devices and the cover of the asteroid field, they struck quickly and disappeared before the Empire could respond. Imperial commanders, unaccustomed to such unorthodox tactics, grew increasingly frustrated. They sent more ships into the field, hoping to corner the elusive human fleet. Each skirmish chipped away at the Empire's forces, but it came at a cost. Lyra lost 2 ships in a daring ambush, their crews sacrificing themselves to protect the others. The losses weighed heavily on her, but she couldn't afford to falter. "They died so we could fight another day," she told her crew, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. "We won't let their sacrifice be in vain." Meanwhile, Admiral Kane and the rest of the fleet prepared for the final confrontation. Using intelligence gathered from spies and intercepted transmissions, they identified the flagship of the Harbinger fleet, the Eclipse Sovereign. This colossal dreadnought served as both a command center and a symbol of the Empire's might. Destroying it would not only cripple the fleet's coordination, but also deliver a psychological blow to the Empire. As the Eternal Resolve and its accompanying ships maneuvered into position, the tension aboard was palpable. The asteroid belt provided cover, but it also posed a significant risk. Navigating the dense field required precise calculations and nerves of steel. One misstep could mean disaster. Yet the crew worked tirelessly, their focus unshaken. They knew this was their moment, their chance to turn the tide. The battle that followed was nothing short of chaos. The Empire's ships poured into the asteroid field, their weapons lighting up the void as they hunted the human fleet. Kane's forces struck from the shadows, targeting supply ships and isolated escorts to weaken the Imperial formation. Each engagement was a desperate dance of survival, the humans using every trick in the book to outwit their adversaries. At the heart of the battle, the Eternal Resolve faced off against the Eclipse Sovereign. The dreadnought's shields absorbed the initial volleys, its return fire a devastating barrage that forced Kane's ship to maneuver wildly. Yet the humans had planned for this. Using decoy drones and advanced jamming technology, they managed to disrupt the Sovereign's targeting systems, creating an opening. Commander Lyra, having regrouped with the main fleet, led a daring assault on the dreadnought's flanks. Her ship darted between the larger vessels, delivering precision strikes to critical systems. "Target their shield generators," she ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. Her crew worked with relentless efficiency, their weapons tearing through the Sovereign's defenses. As the dreadnought's shields began to falter, Admiral Kane gave the order to launch a final attack. The fleet's remaining ships concentrated their fire on the Sovereign, their combined firepower overwhelming its armor. Explosions rippled across the massive vessel, its structure buckling under the assault. In a final, desperate move, the Sovereign attempted to retreat, but it was too late. A well-placed torpedo from Lyra's ship struck the reactor core, triggering a catastrophic chain reaction. The explosion lit up the asteroid field, a brilliant flash of light that marked the end of the Harbinger fleet's command ship. The surviving Imperial forces, leaderless and demoralized, retreated in disarray. For the first time, the Empire's might had been shattered, not by an equal power, but by a species they had dismissed as insignificant. Cheers erupted across the human fleet as the news spread. On Earth and the colonies, people wept with relief and joy. The victory was not just a military triumph. It was proof that humanity could stand against the galaxy's most powerful force. But even amid the celebrations, Kane and Lyra knew the fight was far from over. The Empire would not take. In the midst of the conflict, humanity's fleet launched a daring offensive. Using the information provided by their new allies, they targeted key Imperial supply depots and shipyards. The Eternal Resolve led a strike on the massive Imperial dockyards at Luminara Prime, a facility responsible for building the Empire's most advanced warships. The battle was fierce, the sky ablaze with the light of explosions and energy weapons. Despite heavy resistance, the human fleet succeeded in destroying the facility, dealing a significant blow to the Empire's production capabilities. The victory came at a cost. The Eternal Resolve was heavily damaged, its hull scarred, and its engines barely functional. Admiral Kane himself was injured during the battle, but he refused to leave his post. "We're not done yet," he said, his voice hoarse but determined. "This is just the beginning." The destruction of Luminara Prime sent a message across the galaxy. The Empire was not invincible. It could be hurt, its power chipped away piece by piece. Inspired by humanity's determination, more species joined the rebellion. The galaxy was beginning to unite, its countless voices rising together against their common enemy. But the war was far from over. The Empire, though wounded, was still a colossal force. Its fleets continued to dominate vast swaths of space, and its armies showed no mercy. The Emperor, enraged by the growing rebellion, ordered the deployment of his most fearsome weapon, the Eternal Wrath. This massive superweapon, capable of annihilating entire planets, was a testament to the Empire's technological might and its willingness to use it. News of the Eternal Wrath spread like wildfire, striking fear into the hearts of rebels and civilians alike. The weapon's first target was the planet of Silara, a key stronghold for the rebellion. The destruction of Silara was meant to break the rebellion's spirit, to remind them of the Empire's absolute power. But humanity and its allies had no intention of standing by. As the Eternal Wrath moved toward its target, the fleet mobilized for a desperate mission. If they could destroy the superweapon, it would be a turning point in the war. If they failed, the rebellion might not recover. The galaxy watched as the fleet prepared for its most dangerous battle yet. Humanity, once dismissed as insignificant, now stood at the forefront of a galactic uprising. The fires they had lit burned brighter than ever, spreading across the stars and defying the darkness of tyranny. For the first time in centuries, hope was alive in the galaxy, and humanity was determined to keep it alive, no matter the cost. The galaxy held its breath as humanity and its allies prepared for the final battle. The Eternal Wrath, the Empire's ultimate weapon, loomed like a harbinger of doom, its sleek metallic form glinting in the light of distant stars. Designed to obliterate entire planets, it was the embodiment of the Empire's cruel dominance. For decades, it had remained hidden, its very existence a closely guarded secret. Now, it was the Empire's last card, unleashed to crush the growing rebellion. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Eternal Resolve, the flagship of humanity's fleet, still scared from countless battles. His eyes remained fixed on the tactical display, where the Eternal Wrath loomed at the center of an Imperial armada. Around him, the crew worked with grim determination, their hands steady despite the stakes. They had fought too long and sacrificed too much to falter now. Kane's voice was calm as he addressed the fleet. "This is it," he said, his tone resolute. "The weapon that has brought fear to the galaxy ends here. Not tomorrow. Not in another battle. Today, together, we fight not just for humanity, but for every species that dreams of freedom. We end the Empire's reign, or we perish trying. The battle plan was audacious, a testament to humanity's resourcefulness. The Allies had pooled their strengths, bringing together a diverse fleet of human ingenuity, Krell engineering, Terry technology, and Vosh firepower. Their goal was not merely to defeat the Imperial fleet, but to destroy the Eternal Wrath before it could unleash its destructive power. The stakes were simple. Victory meant freedom, and failure meant annihilation. The battle began with a coordinated assault. The rebel fleet emerged from hyperspace, their ships bursting into the void in tight formations. The Empire's response was immediate. Fighters swarmed from carriers, and capital ships turned their massive cannons toward the oncoming wave. The silence of space erupted into chaos, beams of light, and explosions painting the battlefield. Commander Lyra Patel led the vanguard, her ship, the Shadowrunner, darting between the hulking Imperial warships. Her crew worked with precision, using the ship's speed and cloaking capabilities to strike key targets. Focus on their shield generators, she ordered, her voice steady despite the intensity of the fight. Each strike chipped away at the Empire's defenses, opening gaps for the rest of the fleet to exploit. Meanwhile, Kane coordinated the broader offensive. His calm demeanor belied the storm raging outside. "Divert power to the forward batteries," he commanded. "Concentrate fire on their destroyers. We need to clear a path to the Eternal Wrath." The Eternal Wrath itself remained motionless, a monolithic presence as its escorts fought to protect it. Inside, the Empire's most loyal officers prepared the weapon for activation. The Emperor had made it clear, if the rebellion could not be crushed, the galaxy would burn with them. The Allies pressed their attack, their resolve unyielding. The Krell ships, equipped with advanced repair systems, absorbed heavy fire while repairing themselves mid-battle. The Vosh warriors, known for their ferocity, launched daring boarding actions, seizing control of smaller Imperial vessels and turning their weapons against their former masters. The Exari, with their sophisticated AI-controlled ships, executed precise maneuvers that disrupted the Empire's formations. But the Empire fought back with relentless ferocity. Their numbers were overwhelming, and their ships were built for war. For every Imperial vessel destroyed, another seemed to take its place. Casualties mounted, and the Allied fleet began to waver under the pressure. Then came the breakthrough. A small task force, led by Lyra, managed to breach the Eternal Wrath's defensive perimeter. The task force was a mix of human and Allied ships, their crews handpicked for this critical mission. As they approached the superweapon, it became clear just how massive it was, dwarfing even the largest of their ships. Its surface bristled with weaponry, and its shields glowed faintly, a protective barrier that seemed impenetrable. "We're not turning back now," Lyra said, her voice firm. "All ships, focus fire on the shield emitters. We'll create an opening or die trying." The assault was relentless. Energy beams and missiles hammered the Eternal Wrath's shields, the impacts creating ripples of energy that shimmered across its surface. The weapon's defenses retaliated with devastating force, destroying several Allied ships in fiery explosions. But the remaining ships pressed on, their determination unshaken. Finally, the shields flickered and failed. The Allies had their opening. Kane gave the order for the final phase of the plan. A team of elite commandos, led by Lyra herself, boarded the Eternal Wrath through the breach. Their mission was to disable the weapon's core, a feat that required both technical expertise and raw courage. The corridors of the superweapon were a maze of steel and fire, Imperial soldiers pouring in to stop the intruders. The commandos fought with everything they had. Lyra led the charge, her movements precise as she fired her weapon and issued orders. They faced overwhelming odds, but they had come too far to fail. Step by step, they pushed toward the core, their resolve fueled by the memory of the billions who had already fallen to the Empire's cruelty. When they reached the core, the sight was awe-inspiring. A massive sphere of energy pulsed at the center of the chamber, its glow casting eerie shadows on the walls. The commandos quickly went to work, planting explosives and hacking into the weapon systems. Time was running out, and the Empire's forces were closing in. Lyra stayed behind to ensure the mission's success. As the rest of the team evacuated, she stood before the core, her hand on the detonator. "This is for everyone who's ever suffered under their rule," she said softly, her voice filled with both sorrow and determination. With a final breath, she activated the explosives. The eternal wrath erupted in a blinding explosion, its massive form consumed by fire. The shockwave rippled across the battlefield, disabling nearby ships and forcing the Imperial fleet to retreat in disarray. The Allied fleet, battered but victorious, let out a collective cheer. They had done the impossible. The Empire's greatest weapon was no more. The destruction of the Eternal Wrath marked the turning point in the war. The Emperor, enraged and humiliated, retreated to his throne world, his power base crumbling as more systems joined the rebellion. The Allies pressed their advantage, liberating planet after planet. Humanity, once seen as insignificant, had become a symbol of hope and defiance. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Eternal Resolve, looking out at the stars. The cost of victory had been immense, the sacrifices almost too great to bear. But for the first time in centuries, the galaxy was free. Lyra's sacrifice and the courage of countless others had ensured that. As the fleet set course for Earth, Kane allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. "We've won the battle," he said quietly. "Now we build the peace."